Let's just picture this for a second. Imagine an 11-year veteran of the NBA, right? A guy who's literally battled against the biggest, toughest guys in the world on the hardwood, suddenly coming out and announcing he's declaring for the WNBA draft. Kind of sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? But well, that is exactly what's happening right now with Enes Kanter Freedom. In this explainer, we're going to dive into a story that sits right at the chaotic intersection of sports, politics, and a life completely defined by unyielding defiance.
So let's kick things off with Section 1, a shocking draft declaration. To actually understand how we got here, we've got to look at the breaking news that basically set the internet on fire recently. On August 7th, 2026, the sports world woke up to this truly wild headline. Enes Kanter Freedom posted a video that completely flipped the script on your everyday sports news, and it brilliantly illustrates the core of his argument. He said, and I quote, "If simply declaring who you are is all that's required, then I meet every single requirement necessary to compete in the WNBA." Now, we're going to look at this totally neutrally today because, honestly, whether you agree with him or not, this highly debative cultural moment is our starting point. It's a statement that immediately forces us to take a magnifying glass to league guidelines and, really, the nature of activism in modern sports.
So, the million-dollar question here is why? Why is an established 11-year NBA veteran center declaring for a women's professional basketball league? To really grasp the gravity of this move, we actually need to take a step back. We need to look at the fascinating flashback of his incredible basketball career. Which brings us to part 2, from prodigy to NBA star.
You see, before he was making international headlines for his political activism, he was known for absolute, sheer athletic dominance. We really have to establish his basketball foundation here so we can all understand the massive magnitude of the platform he holds today. 748. That is the number of regular season NBA games he played. That's a huge career. Born in Switzerland, raised in Turkey, Kanter was an absolute basketball prodigy. He came over to the U.S. to play college ball for the iconic Kentucky Wildcats, and boom, he instantly made a name for himself as a top-tier prospect in the American sports landscape. His defining trait? Total consistency. He was drafted 3rd overall by the Utah Jazz back in 2011, and he didn't just fizzle out. He played for 5 major franchises: the Jazz, the OKC Thunder, the Knicks, the Trailblazers, and the Boston Celtics. Over that 11-year span, he was just a highly reliable center. I mean, he was a walking double-double machine, averaging 11.2 points and 7.8 rebounds a game. He was this high-energy fan favorite, but while he was dominating in the paint, his biggest, most significant battles were actually brewing off the court. Let's move to part 3, the price of dissent.
Because he was such a vocal critic of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Kanter found himself directly in a geopolitical crosshair. And to be clear, this wasn't just a simple political disagreement. This was a massive conflict that would ultimately cost him his family, his homeland, and his basic freedom of movement. If we walk through this timeline, you can see how unbelievably fast his situation escalated. In 2016, his passport was invalidated by Turkey, which led to him being dramatically detained at an airport in Romania. Then, by 2017, his Turkish passport was revoked entirely, leaving him legally stateless. Even his own family back in Turkey publicly disowned him over his political views. Fast forward to 2021, and he finally gains U.S. citizenship, finding a bit of a safe harbor. But the threat? It didn't end there, as you can see from a brand new arrest warrant issued just last month in 2026. Let's break down exactly what the Turkish government is claiming here. Turkish prosecutors accuse him of being a member of FETÖ, an organization they label a terror group, and actually blame for the failed coup in 2016. The real-time danger he faces is incredibly severe. I mean, it's so severe that Kanter once refused to travel to London for a regular season NBA game because he legitimately feared he'd be assassinated for his opposition to Erdogan. And then, on July 30, 2026, they issued that fresh arrest warrant, accusing him of using encrypted messaging to spread his political views. They even went so far as to request an Interpol red notice for his arrest. So, faced with all of this intense international pressure, how did he respond to that July 2026 warrant? Well, with absolute defiance. He took straight to social media, writing in Turkish, "You cannot catch me, don't waste your energy." It's just a stunning display of his absolute refusal to back down. It shows a man who literally will not be silenced, no matter what kind of institutional power is leveled against him. Which leads us to part 4, a new name and nation. This intense period of political exile forced a major personal transformation, one that perfectly bridges the gap between his Turkish activism and his current involvement in American social debates. In November 2021, he didn't just become a United States citizen. He went ahead and legally changed his name from Enes Kanter to Enes Kanter Freedom. He explicitly chose the name Freedom as a way to celebrate his new citizenship and boldly represent the democratic values that he felt his home country of Turkey had completely abandoned. He essentially traded in his basketball jersey for a suit and tie, stepping up to become one of the most prominent human rights activists in the entire sports world. And his milestones? They're staggering. We're talking about a guy who's been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, testified before the US Congress, and even authored a book. And he definitely isn't afraid to call out his peers either. You might remember he famously blasted NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal for posing in a photo with President Erdogan. He publicly asked Shaq, "How much is your integrity worth?" He is completely unapologetic, and he uses his platform at literally every single opportunity. All right, on to our final section, Part 5, the WNBA Challenge Explained. Now, keeping in mind his background of intense, high-stakes activism, his recent declaration for the WNBA draft takes on a very deliberate light. It isn't just some random occurrence. It's a calculated political statement intended to directly challenge the league's eligibility guidelines. In that video he posted to X, he laid out his rationale, saying, "I am definitely not here to mock, make fun of, or disrespect any community or personal choices." His stated argument is really just about the rules. He's arguing that if the league has specific eligibility guidelines regarding gender identity, then logically, those rules must be applied equally to everyone, including him. And what's really fascinating here is that this isn't some sudden overnight stunt. He actually planted the seeds for this whole thing way back in 2023. Back then, he famously and very provocatively claimed, "I could put on a wig, identify as a woman, and start dominating the WNBA." He even threw out some crazy numbers, claiming he could average 60 points and 30 rebounds a game. So he's clearly been thinking about the intersection of gender policies and competitive sports for years now. So far, the WNBA hasn't officially responded to his draft declaration. And frankly, there's no clear indication he actually intends to pursue a spot on a roster. But his simple little video sign-off, "See you at training camp," kind of proves that this is really about making a point. It's just the latest chapter in his lifelong fight against what he perceives as hypocrisy. For him, the game has clearly always been about a lot more than just basketball. It's a vehicle for pushing boundaries and speaking truth to power. So all of this leaves us with one final, very provocative question to ponder. What does this kind of political statement mean for the future of sports and activism? I mean, when an athlete is willing to give up his home country, face international arrest warrants, and then turn around and directly challenge the policies of a major American sports league, it feels like the lines between the court and the culture are forever blurred. Silence has literally never been an option for him. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep asking questions and keep learning.